This is something new that I've decided to do. Where it's basically I just come on here, I pick a topic pretty much daily, and I spend like 30 minutes talking about it in kind of like a philosophical way. But it's all just my thoughts. There'll never be any notes on it. I won't really edit the videos. It'll be kind of messy, but like I don't necessarily expect this to do numbers. Like I think it'll be just somewhere I can kind of keep a collection of my thoughts, almost like mini therapy sessions, you know? And then maybe some people find it and enjoy what I have to say and continue to tune in. And I think that would kind of be cool. But yeah, today's topic will be relationships, right? More so romantic relationships is what we'll talk about, and I'll be talking about it kind of from the perspective of a male in romantic relationships. Now, ladies, if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, well, this video isn't going to be for me, I would say continue watching because you might get some insight onto how I'm feeling at least. And I think from talking with my friends, they might be feeling the same. I'm not fully sure. But um, yeah, so the first kind of thing that I want to talk about it the expectations that women have nowadays for men in relationships and kind of what I struggle with um being right so like living up to those expectations and it's really difficult and the kind of the main part I want to talk about right now is like kind of masculinity that kind of leadership right so I would say that it's fair to say that a lot of women nowadays they look for a man who can lead, right? They don't want to arrange the dates. Okay, they want to be taken on dates. They want you to say, "Hey, here's the time, here's the place. I'm taking care of it, no problem." And they love that, right? Because it's showing that you know what you want, right? And that you're taking the lead to get there. And it's the same with gifts and stuff like that, and flowers, and they want you to open the door, and and that's chivalry, right? And that is standard, and it's always something that I kind of took as bare minimum, okay, completely bare minimum. But then there's also the flip side where you they expect you to know exactly where to draw the line with the masculinity. Um, and what I mean by that is, let's say your girlfriend is going out on a night out, okay, and you think that you're in this leading role, and you feel kind of uncomfortable. Just there's certain factors that you feel uncomfortable about, right? And you say, "Hey, you're not going out tonight. I don't like what you're wearing," and then it's a massive problem, okay? And like, listen, I'm not saying that that's necessarily right. But what I'm saying is for men nowadays, it can be confusing when women want the lead and the authority in certain situations, and then when it comes to others, and it can interrupt their fun, they don't want it. And I know that, especially in some of the relationships I've had, because I've had a few, none necessarily healthy, but obviously, look, I'm very young. I'm still 19, so there was a lot of growing in them. But I, I, I know that that was a line I struggled with crossing quite a bit, where it's like, okay, well, you want me to lead here, here, and here, so I'm gonna lead feelings based and say I don't like what you're wearing. Change that shit, you know, and then it's met with resistance, and it can often feel controlling, right? And like I said, I'm not saying that you have the right to say you're not going here and you're not wearing this, but what I'm saying is I see how for men it can be confusing in those situations. And another thing to kind of lead off that is then when it comes to being emotional, right? I think it's very pick and choose when you get to be emotional from women, right? So a lot of women will say, "Hey, I want somebody who is open and who can express their feelings and stuff like that." And then when those feelings are expressed, it's not met with what is expected. I think I do think that relationships nowadays are extremely difficult, not just for men. Obviously, like I said, I'm speaking from that male perspective, but for women also. But especially myself, I know that, I think that I'm happy with my personality and how I handle myself in situations regarding women where, I can be fun and entertaining and soft and all that stuff, and I can switch to the masculine role when it needs to be there, like on dates and stuff like that, or if confrontation might happen, and with setting certain boundaries. But again, you have to be so careful because sometimes setting boundaries can be seen as controlling. And like I said, it's just an area that I know a lot of my friends or a lot of people that I see, or even girls I talk to who have boyfriends, I can hear from what they're saying sometimes, and I'm like, I know their boyfriend is so confused right now. Do I have an answer or a solution? No, but I just do think it's very interesting. And I think with social media, it's just progressively getting worse for men in relationships, because there's so much being told to them about what they should do. Sometimes it's coming from the wrong people, and sometimes the advice is good, and it's hard to determine which is which, especially when you maybe don't have much experience. And then there's also been a lot of information just pushed onto women about, you deserve this, you deserve this, you deserve this, you deserve this. And of course, beautiful women deserve a lot, but there should also be some given. And then you also see a lot of times, you know, women are being kind of slated online in certain situations, and maybe they're thinking that that's acceptable and they should accept that. It's I think that it's one of the hard. I'd say currently it's the hardest time that it ever has been to navigate a relationship, not be in one, okay? Because with wars and with like women's rights only coming into place recently, I can see that, and like okay, like to be fair, we're living in a pretty chill time compared to most. But what I mean is all the different expectations and complexities that come with relationships. I think that now might be the hardest time in history to navigate it on an emotional level. I think that there is almost the expectation of perfection in everything nowadays, in absolutely everything. Like we see cancel culture where a celebrity or a creator or an influencer makes one mistake and they're crucified for it because they have a platform. And it's like, okay, let's go and look at the mistakes that you've made. And if they were all public and you had a platform, you would probably, it's probably cancelable as well, or not even cancelable, but people would try to, and there's just such an expectation for perfection, and it's weird and it's difficult. I'm kind of going off the topic of relationships at the minute, but it's all relevant. It's all relevant. Like I said, I'm not going to be editing these videos. It's just pure. I'm just really just giving you my thoughts as I explore a different topic. Like I said, there's no script. I feel it's really like you guys are just my friends, and I say you guys, I'm expecting to get like 0 views on this, but that's fine. I don't mind. But it's like we're just having a conversation back and forth, but I just get to talk the whole time. So I'm enjoying this as a kind of give you my thoughts, almost like a journal. But yeah, and then what else on relationships? We'll talk about picking your partner. Okay, this is also something that I think is done wrong nowadays. Is picking your partner, and I think that it comes from a loneliness in men and women nowadays, and women, right? You see a lot of this male loneliness epidemic. But look, I want to come at it from both perspectives, right? And yeah, picking your partner. Okay, as a person, everybody has different moral values and standards and expectations. Okay, and it's that whole nature versus nurture. Some you are just built in, and some are formed through watching your parents in a relationship, maybe past traumatic experiences, and then sometimes it's just wants, needs and wants. Okay, And you should have a clear set of boundaries, right? And a clear set of expectations, not that are unrealistic, like I said before, where you're expecting somebody to be perfect, but you should kind of be able to say, okay, look, I feel uncomfortable when I have a girlfriend that is consistently going out. Well, then you don't pick somebody who is consistently going out, right? Or you say, you know, I like somebody who is physically active, and who likes to go for sport. I want somebody to go for a run with me. You don't pick somebody then who isn't athletic or has no interest in that sort of thing and then get upset when they say they don't want to come for a run with you, you know? And I think, like I was saying with the loneliness thing, a lot of the time now, a man or a woman will see somebody who's attractive and they will approach them or they'll text them or whatever, and that person will show some form of reciprocation of a crush or a likeness to that person, or they'll say, oh well, I find you attractive as well, and then it's boom, they're thinking about a relationship. Okay, and you don't know that much about them, right? And then when you find out stuff about them and it doesn't match your expectations or your boundaries, you ignore that and you jump into a relationship with them anyway, and you keep talking to them just because you want someone. Okay, and just because you want to be in a relationship, you're not loving that feeling of loneliness. But then you get mad when they don't live up to your expectations, or the boundaries that you set don't work for them, and they're not willing to not obey those boundaries. And that's a terrible word, but kind of play along, I would say. And obviously, like I said before, you have to make sure that the boundaries aren't bordering controlling, which often they can be. But my point is, we need to stop being so eager and jumping into things. And I think we need to just take a step back. And I'm at fault in this too. There's often been times where I have started dating a woman and expected all the things from her that she's not ready to give, right? I'm actually going to talk about a past kind of relationship. Obviously, I'm not going to say any names, but I was dating a girl for quite some time, and I'm a very outgoing person, right? I love big acts. Okay, if I'm dating somebody and they call me at 2:30 and say hi, come see me, I'm getting in the car. I don't care. Like what? That's me. Okay. If I'm dating somebody and they're ill, I'm going to show up at their door with flowers and all that shit, right? I don't want to sound like I'm bigging myself up here, but I get that from my dad, right? And it's just really outgoing. Okay, I just like to do crazy stuff, big acts of affection. Okay, and consistent showing off. If you'll be posted, and I want all this stuff. And the person that I was dating wasn't really like that. And what I only found out after the relationship is that they actually felt really guilty when I was doing these big acts of affection and buying gifts and stuff like that, because at the time I had money and they weren't working at the time. It didn't work with school and stuff, and they didn't have it to give back, and I was actually making them feel guilty, right? So that's where I wasn't living up to their expectations. Okay, and I was actually causing harm in what I was doing that I thought was me, like showing them how much I cared for them and liked them. And for me, okay, there was a lot of kind of small things that I didn't like, and it was kind of random bursts of attitude, maybe, or let's say, and this is a big fault of mine, right? That I'm working on fixing and that I kind of have, but I used to get very uncomfortable with certain things and small things. I thought, okay, there was one place where this current, this ex girlfriend and her friend used to go and relax and chill out, right? Uh, I had a bad memory attached to that place. So I was always saying, I don't like when you go there. Why do you go there? I'm asking you, there's just one spot. Please don't go there. You're going out really late. I'm not around to like be there if something happens. It's not a great place anyway. There could be people around doing stuff they're not supposed to. And this was my big thing. And she never really uh, no, she would acknowledge it but do it anyway because she didn't see it as a big deal, right? Now, Was that me being controlling? Kind of. But also, I was thinking, you just go anywhere else. It's just chill in the house. You're only sitting outside. There's no real difference. But to her, it was like I was just trying to grab onto her and keep her, and she didn't understand that, right? So that's an expectation I had that she wasn't able to kind of live up to, and that's not her fault, but it's also not my fault for having that expectation. Okay, another big thing was I where I'm from. Okay, I've had a crazy past, so there was there has been time periods where I haven't been overly liked in where I'm from, right? And something that I really wanted was that when I had a girlfriend, right, and when I was, buying gifts or when I was with them and I was taking them to cool places and stuff like that, I really wanted to be posted. Okay, and it was kind of like for validation, and it was really so that I knew that they weren't embarrassed to be with me, right? I wanted to be posted so I didn't feel like this person, didn't want other people to know I was with them. And I also kind of wanted them to be almost proud that they were with me, and I wanted them to kind of show me off and show off the things that I was doing. Like, while I was doing it for them, I was doing it for them, which is something that was brought up in this time. It was like, well, are you doing it for everybody else, or are you doing it for me? I was doing it for them, but I still was really looking for some sort of public affection and public validation, like, oh my god, this is my boyfriend, guys, I'm so happy to be with him. And the person that I was with didn't really post. They were more of a private person. They like to keep things private. Okay? This was something that I knew before dating them, and I still expected them to change it just because it was something I wanted. Okay? Now you come to um, agreements. What's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? You come to, not alternatives. You know the word I'm looking for. You compromise in a relationship, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm not really outgoing, but I'll do this, this, and this, and you can do that stuff, okay? But if somebody is inherently different to your expectation, and you expect them to change, that it's on you. It's on you if they don't do that, and you need to kind of sit back and take a minute to say, okay, is this person really for me? Okay, and that's kind of my whole point on that topic. We need to stop rushing in. We need to take a little while to get to know somebody. If you want to ask that person, hey, let's keep, if you wouldn't mind, let's keep this exclusive for a little while. I wouldn't mind getting to know you more to see if I could move into a relationship. I just don't want to jump into something and then have really high expectations and standards that don't align with you. And a lot of like these mature conversations and this communication is what we need to do more of nowadays. There was so much of it years ago, and I feel like it's just got lost through consistent texting and social media, right? Yeah, there was a point that I wanted to drag on to, and it's kind of gone out of my head now, but that's okay. Um, Something that can be really difficult. I found my train of thought, guys. That's why I'm coming back. But something that can be really difficult with the situation that I just talked about is when you ignore the fact that somebody doesn't align with you, okay? And you can identify areas where, they're not going to live up to the expectations that you have, or they're not similar to you with their thought process and the way that they do things, and you ignore that and you start dating them, okay? And, there's the honeymoon stage, and then there's the chill stage, and then there's the argument stage, okay? If you're with them for more than like 8 to 10 months, you can develop some serious feelings for that person and possibly even attachment if some big events happen in between, okay? And if, while you're not necessarily a perfect fit, there's still love there and you still care for them. It can be really hard after that 8 to 10 month stage, and you've put so much time in this relationship, to be able to sit back and say, okay, well, look, it's been 8 to 10 months. They haven't changed when I've asked them to change, which I know is kind of unrealistic and ridiculous for me to ask them to change exactly who they are before I met them to just fit what I want. And now I gotta leave, but it's really hard to leave at that stage because you're like, well, I've put 8 to 10 months into this. Why am I going to give up now? And I think that that's why we see such a high divorce rate currently, or such difficult and unhappy relationships where oftentimes people are only together because they have kids, you know? And it's really unfortunate. And I think that if you are unhappy in your relationship, even if you just take a break, right? And you take that break to have some time to yourself to think where you're not with the person you might have grown attached to or grown to love, even though you don't click and you kind of clash, and say, okay, well, look, I'm spending some time alone. Now that I don't have to, you know, fit their perception or try and be the person they have imagined me to be, am I happier? And now that I'm not feeling let down the entire time, am I happier? And I think that's really important. Now, look, if you're taking that break, don't do what I've done and move on in that short period of time and expect everything to be okay if you're ready to go and try and get back there. And just do take that time, and it can lead to a kind of epiphany almost where you're like, okay, this definitely isn't working. Or, okay, do you know what? No, let's give this another shot. Let's see what's going on. Let's try it again, right? Okay. The next kind of point I want to go on to is emotional maturity in relationships. Okay. Um, when it comes to emotional maturity, everybody is kind of at a different age. Is you know, like, and some people, some guys became a man at 12. You know, like emotionally, okay, and kind of mentally, and sometimes it doesn't happen until they're 35. You know what I mean? If they have had kind of a nice chill life, and they've been blessed and everything has been smooth sailing and they don't have to kind of harden or understand kind of complex emotions that they may have experienced through different traumatic situations. They don't have a need to have an insane level of emotional maturity. And then there's the other kind where it's like, oh my god, um, maybe the parents split up and the emotions that came with that. Maybe a relative that was very close to them, like a brother or sister or parent, died, or a grandparent that was very close. They died and they had to, go through all the emotions that come with grief. Um, Maybe they've had some relationships when younger and have a better way or knowledge on how to navigate certain arguments and situations better than other people. Maybe there's been some other traumatic event, an illness, or all this stuff where, their ability to be empathetic increases, their ability to understand increases, their, you know, likeliness to go into a sudden rage decreases or increases depending on the experience they had. And while this isn't a first date conversation, I do think it should be a before we get into a relationship conversation. Like, hey, there's a level of emotional needs that I have, and I'm not going to be consistently putting my problems onto you, but I do need to be with somebody who does understand how to navigate certain situations and be empathetic when I need them to be empathetic and be there for me and be, able to handle certain situations where I might break down or shut down or shut out and shut you out, right? And these are responses, trauma responses, or just different habits that I've formed throughout different experiences. are you going to be able to do that? Because in 2 months' time, when we've been dating for 2 months, and I see something that just completely sets me off, or it could be something like I hear a song. We are driving in the car, and I hear a song, and oh my god, this song was played at so and so's funeral, and I need like a day to kind of like, oh my god, the emotions that just rushed into my body. Are you going to be able to understand that, or are you going to look at me and be like, what? Because you've never experienced anything like that, right? And it's something that's difficult, and there is a fine line with it as well. I think sometimes people might have certain mental health issues, and they will use that to use it as an excuse to cover up certain behavior that it's kind of like, come on, like, okay, you cheated because your grand died in 2004, dude. You're 18, you weren't even born in 2004. What are you talking about? Like, there are certain things, like that, where it's like, okay, come on. But there are other things that are genuine, trauma responses or emotional responses to situations, and it's like, you don't have to explain all of them to the person that you're about to start dating, but there should be a conversation where it's like, okay, what stage do you kind of think you're at? Do you think that, you're going to be able to be there for me in these situations? I might kind of have a few more difficult ones than other people because of what has happened in my past, right? Everything that I'm saying here, I guess it's kind of like stuff that I've picked up along the way, or advice almost, before getting into a relationship and while being in one, and just kind of exploring it. It's not as philosophical as I thought it was going to be. It's, like I said, it's more kind of like a couples therapy conversation. But I think it's really important, and I think that these are key important points that you should look at. And like, obviously, I'm not going to cover all of them, but I'm covering the main ones. I think. But yeah, emotional maturity. It's a conversation that needs to be had to, again, discover your compatibility. You need to find somebody you're compatible with, and sometimes that won't happen until very later in your life. You see stories sometimes of a 60 something year old getting married for the first time, and you might be thinking, oh my god, he spent so much time alone. But maybe he spent a lot of time without having to argue with somebody because they weren't actually in line with what they needed or compatible, and they finally found that person. And I think that's more respectable and admirable than people who don't do that and then just end up staying together because the divorce is too difficult and too expensive and a pain in the arse, and they have kids and all that stuff. So I think we need to slow down. And my main point is we need to slow down. Everything's so fast nowadays, even with sexual expectations. And I'm no angel, I say practice what I preach. Yeah, what do no? It's practice, don't preach. Whatever it is, I don't do it. But I don't. But it's like, you know, with social media and with how difficult life can be, when you have a load of college work, you're either looking for a job or you're working one. You have family problems, you have personal problems, you have all these problems. You're trying to stay in shape, you're trying to eat how, and the days are busy and you have responsibilities and stuff like that. Everything's so fast. I I think that sometimes we need to pull away, slow down and think, and that goes for relationships as well. You're lonely, okay. You need some emotional support that's romantic, because let's be honest, like, if I talk to one of my good friends about an emotional problem I have, or I'm having a bad day and I feel kind of shitty, that's good, right? And you should do that. But there is a difference between talking to a friend and being held by a lover and saying the same situation. There's a different bodily response, like an emotional response. Like, I'm sure there's science behind it. Like I said, I don't research this shit. I'm just telling you my thoughts, but I'm sure there's science behind it, that will do more for you. But sometimes you don't need a relationship for that. Well, I'm not saying go out there and sleep around. I'm saying that sometimes maybe you can find somebody that you are romantically interested in, and that is also romantically interested in you, but you might not align. And you can just pass the time with that person and say, you explain it to them and you say, hey, here's the situation. I don't want to be alone the whole time. I like you, you're chill, I don't think that we'd be good in a relationship just because our personalities don't align. But you want to chill half the time, and maybe I can come to you for emotional support and you can also come to me. And that's still slowing it down. That's not rushing into anything, but it's getting you the support you need. Conversations, communication, all of that is so lost nowadays. I think there's like an expectation of being like nonchalant, or being cool and relaxed and not caring about anything and all that stuff. And as a result, there are so many things that are left unsaid. What a waste. What a waste. Never in my life will I think of something positive about someone and not let them know. Never will I like somebody or be into someone and not let them know. Something that I do, or what I would like to work on, is passing people that I find attractive and letting them know. I think there's a bit of fear of rejection there and stuff, just going up to them and saying it. But you can text and put the phone away and do something else and not think about it until you get a reply. But speak, communicate, You think somebody is cool and attractive and you like chilling with them, let them know. You don't want a relationship, let them know as well. What are they going to say? No. A lot of the time, if you tell somebody that you find them attractive and you enjoy their presence and you wouldn't mind chilling with them, even if they say no, they're not going to say it in a mean way. Who doesn't like to be complimented and validated and shown love and told that they're cool? And you uh, speak more. It annoys me so much. There's so much love and so much like niceness that just isn't being expressed because people want to appear a certain way. Another thing that I hate is when people are like, "Oh, that's cringe." I want to punch you if you say that's cringe. I hate cringe. What? You are scared to say something that will make somebody feel good because it's cringe. Now, look, there's lines. Like I said, again, with everything, there's lines. There's some stuff, yeah, okay, that's ridiculous. Whoa, okay? But the majority of the time, I remember, like, there was a girl that I was speaking to, right? And she was telling me that her friend stopped speaking to her situationship because she caught feelings for him and didn't want to tell him that she caught feelings for him because it was cringe, so she ended the situationship. That dude could have been in love with her. From what I gathered, they were compatible. And she wouldn't express it, and she would rather end it because she was worried she might come across as cringe. How much love is lost? How much affection is not given because of societal expectations and regulations and all this shit? Pardon my French. Ridiculous, you know? But yeah, I might be done there. I said I was going to do 30 minutes. I kind of ran over. There's one or two bits I'm going to edit on this, but this was like thoroughly enjoyable. This is one of my favorite things that I've ever done. I really like this. I'm going to try and post a video pretty much every night, which is crazy. And I'll find new topics. I want to talk about kind of parents maybe in the next one or something like that. If you would like me to talk about any topics, do let me know. Um, but yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. If you watched to this stage, do drop a comment and let me know. Like I said, this is the type of video I'll be doing. It's just my thoughts. Maybe you have no interest in it. Maybe this gets 0 views. That's fine. I'm going to keep posting and I'll be consistent and maybe we'll do something. I apologize for the terrible sound and camera quality. I think it gives a cool effect. Um, yeah, that's it from me. That's my take on relationships. Have a good one.